Howdy ho, everyone.
Howdy who?
Why are you so
Where'd all this
questioning
dust come from? Did you
What
see that?
dust?
I could see it going on my screen, and then I looked and it was all in front of me. Hello?
This is when the ghosts come out. They're like, you've been
Yeah.
recording for too many hours today.
What the fuck? Well, it's a lovely freezing morning that's wet in Massachusetts.
It's wet here too.
Yeah, which I like because this morning Brian was like, come to the window. And I ran over and our whole yard was just filled with birds who were looking for worms and bugs.
What kind of birds?
Oh, so many. We had robins, we had blue jays, we had a bunch of different types of finches. There was a ton. You know, I was there with my Merlin ID app.
Oh, of course.
I've seen some variation of woodpecker activity in the area as well. There's a couple different flavors here.
Flavors? Is that what you call the different types of birds?
Yeah.
What kind of flavor of bird are you having today?
And then, well, no, never mind. I don't need to keep talking about birds. Let's move on.
You can.
No, this is Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two girls, one ghost. And we are your ghostesses. That's Corinne, the bird
Hello.
lady, and I'm Sabrina. And this is an encounters episode. So basically, when you email us your haunting encounters and tales, we go through them, we read them. We're like, ooh, this is tantalizing. This tickled my funny bones today, or my spooky spinal cord. And we decide to read them back to you. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being fucking creepy. We love you.
Hi, spooky ladies. I'm writing to you from British Columbia, Canada, where I live oceanside with 3 cats. I'm living the dream, one might say.
That is the dream.
Can you see orcas from your window? Tell me.
All of a sudden, you're going to see a lady standing out of your window, and it's going to be me because I want in the house.
In your Chucky outfit from Last Encounters. Let me in. I smell cats. I've had a paranormal sense for as long as I can remember. My grandma was my best friend, and she passed away when I was only 7, but to me, she was never actually gone. I would write my mom letters from my grandma after she passed. She has shown me some of these letters as an adult, and it has solidified the fact that I will never bear children.
Oh,
she's
my
a creepy kid. And my diary growing up was just letters to my grandma.
That's so sweet.
It's so sweet. It's so innocent, but it's also a little bit obsessive and creepy.
Well, you know what? As a child, that's probably how you needed to process your loss.
Yeah. And maybe grandma's ghost was like, I can't understand everything all at once, so I need you to just write it down.
Please write it
down. So I can read it.
I'll read it at night when you're sleeping.
Yes. Aside from a number of ghostly encounters, including the Edinburgh Vaults, the creepiest place on earth. My whole life, I have been in touch with something beyond what I can see. Sometimes I get these feelings, like a claircognizance is what I've been told it's called. And I just know something that I would have absolutely no way of knowing. And I can never actually back up my facts until it becomes plain as day in this realm to others. I'm writing you 3 of my most what the fuck experiences that I cannot explain. And I hope you enjoy them.
I love this because it's like clearly they have had so many encounters, but narrowed it down to 3.
Yeah. It's like, what are the ones that stick with you the most? The ones that you tell other people most often. Like, what are your stories that when someone's like, I don't think I believe in ghosts. You're like, well, let me tell you this story that happened to me.
Let me tell you about this.
We want those.
We want all of them.
I used to work at a beautiful golf course in Alberta where we would host weddings often. And one day I went into work, and during our pre-shift lineup, I noticed my mouth moving when I hadn't actually had a previous thought of what I was saying. I interrupted my boss to ask, has anyone ever died at a wedding here? She paused and she looked at me and replied, I'm sure people die at weddings all the time, but never here all the time. What?
Well, I could see that.
Oh my God, but never here. The thought left me as soon as I had the answer, and we got to work serving the dinner. 3 hours later, the dinner was done and the dancing had begun. I was the only staff member working at the bar in a section of the room that was part of the ballroom, but separated by a large fireplace. I was mid-convo with a guest when I realized there was a commotion going on only a feet away from me. The grandfather of the room had just left the dance floor, and as he passed the fireplace into my section of the ballroom, he had a heart attack and he dropped dead. As I realized what was going on, I stood in shock, and other staff members ran into the room. A few of them present in the meeting earlier looked over at me, and I stared back thinking, did I do this? Did I bring death into this place? None of us were trained on anything except for how to pour a vodka soda. So the staff and I just stood there as some nurses attending the wedding tried to revive the grandpa. It was a lot to watch the entire family lose a family member at what was supposed to be this joyous occasion, but all I could think of was, how did I know? Unsure of how to help, all of the staff just grabbed water and wet cloths for the guest and stood back as an ambulance came and the guests got ushered home.
Jeez.
Later that evening, after the chaos had subsided a little bit, we all went back into the dining room to clean up. As I walked into the room from the kitchen, it was as if I hit this wall. The energy was so heavy, and as I turned to the fireplace, I saw the man still lying on the floor, covered in a purple blanket, waiting for the coroner before he could be removed.
Oh, geez.
The energy and the realization of what had happened to the family finally hit me at this point, and I ended up not actually being able to work in the dining room for the rest of the evening, and I just helped clean up the kitchen instead. I think the worst part of the event was the next morning when I went into work, I saw 2 coworkers having absolutely no idea what had happened the night before, trying to clean up the stain of vomit on the ground from where he had passed away. Oh, this is horrific. I will never forget the look of absolute horror on their faces when we told them what they were cleaning up. Poor guys. One of them did me a dirty later in the season, though he can eat shit. I thought that the golf course might be haunted after that event. However, I actually could sense that he had fully moved on and that this man was in peace.
Mm-mm.
I only got chills one time walking over that spot, and it was the very next day. And I had an energy session with a shaman following this to get some clarity on what had happened and if I had been responsible for killing this old man. And she told me that he came through and said that he was peacefully on the other side. So I really didn't put much thought into that event after that.
You did not do that at all.
No.
I know that this is a really, really sad story, and I can't even imagine losing a grandparent or a loved one at a wedding. But like, what I love about this is that I think potentially it would have happened regardless. And they were picking up on that energy of like something about to happen. Clearly, this listener is in tune with the paranormal world, with something that we don't fully understand. And also, I love that despite how tragic that ending of a wedding is, the grandfather was able to be there and see his grandchild get married.
Yeah. To your point, there was something in the air, some energy being picked up on, because it wasn't like the thought had crossed their minds and they were just then asking their boss, like, ooh, has anyone ever died at a wedding? Because you get the sense of death or sadness or grief. This person didn't even know that they were saying what they were saying until it already came out. Like, it was never even a thought. It just was coming out of their mouth. Oh my gosh. What a horrific experience, though. I'm so sorry for everyone involved there.
Yeah.
My next story takes place where I live now, which is in a tiny coastal town. I worked at a family-owned restaurant, and unfortunately, the male owner had a bit of a drinking problem. And I have so many fond memories of this man. He told me that lots of servers come through this restaurant, but that I was memorable. I always felt a strange connection to him and had only worked there for a year, but he had this unfortunate accident at the restaurant late at night and he passed away. He was only in his early 40s and he left behind a beautiful wife and 3 children. I was working with him that day, the day that the accident happened. However, as it happened overnight, we didn't find out until the next day. My last conversation with him was me telling him a joke as he poured his first whiskey and coffee of the day, and I'm forever grateful for that. Here's the joke, and I made it up on the spot. What did they call it when cats took over the world? A catastrophe. And they write, it was a terrible joke, but he liked them.
Okay, can I pitch an alt answer to that joke?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Dumb, but funny. The restaurant closed for a few weeks after the incident, and later that month, we had a Christmas get-together with the staff at the restaurant. I had a dream the night before that I was working at the restaurant and he was walking around. However, his energy was different. I kept asking him, why are you here? He told me that he would still be around to help. At the end of the dream, he told me to ice his wife, and then he walked into the kitchen and disappeared.
Like Smirnoff ice?
I think so. I woke up confused, but I'm never one to deny a dead man's wishes. I went to the liquor store and I picked up a Smirnoff in a gift bag, and then I went to the staff party. Later in the evening, his wife was alone in the back room collecting herself, and I took the opportunity to give her my gift. She had told me previously that she felt her late husband at home and at the restaurant. I'm glad that I'm the ghostly go-to gal to confess these things to. I knew that when I told her this gift was actually from him via a dream, she would be open to it. She pulled out the gift and immediately tears started flowing. Turns out Smirnoff Ice was their drink back when they first started dating, and he would ice her regularly.
Oh.
I felt so grateful to be the one entrusted to continue his pranks from the other side.
That is so special. So clearly Mickey has a connection to the other side and
For sure.
perhaps would be able to tap into it more. But the one, so like the first story, like because there was no connection Mickey had to that person, like it feels way more confusing. But this one is more digestible because Mickey knew the man.
I also appreciate the confidence Mickey has, whether Mickey knows it or not, because I guess in the first one, she was just like compelled to say something and didn't really get the choice to think about it.
Yeah.
But there's not much questioning. It's just like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do.
I'll do it.
Very ghost whisper of you, Mickey. My final story takes place in a farmhouse in rural South France where a friend and I worked on a bee farm for a month.
Whoa.
We got the position online. Sabrina, you should do this.
I feel like you want me to do it because you want to do it.
I do. I want to live vicariously
Never in my life
you.
have I been like, I want to be a beekeeper. I think bees are so fascinating, but I don't want to do that.
I could be a beekeeper. Please, just do it for me. This is the only gift I'll ever ask for. One of my neighbors is a beekeeper. I can just go over there and be like, can I wear your outfit? Go near the bees.
Is that what you want? Just to put the outfit on?
Yeah. And to scrape the honey.
Okay.
And
We can
maybe
make
to
that
put
happen
it
for
in
you.
my mouth while it's still attached to the comb.
Oh, we can make that happen.
But then I don't like the comb because it's waxy. And when you chew it,
Yeah, I don't
it's
like
like I
the comb
bought
either.
it. You know, I
Yeah.
bought the honeycomb. I don't like it.
Me neither.
It's more of an intrusive thought thing where I just want to like eat the comb while it's.
It's also like a just try it once situation to say that you did it.
Yeah.
That's not a harmful, intrusive thought.
No, it's not like most of the ones that cross through my mind. This
Right.
one's something I could act on.
Exactly. Like putting my face in paint. I did that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the
Doesn't hurt
horrific
anyone
thoughts
else.
that I have every time Brian leaves the house where I'm like, he's going to die and never come back.
Right. Which those are scary and anxiety inducing.
I know. We got the position online, and before arriving, we understood that we lived in a studio at the farm while the family lived at the house in town, and that is pretty much all we knew of the job. My friend told me that she had a dream of the house before we left Canada. The farmhouse had no window panes, and when you entered, there were children's toys everywhere. After walking over all the toys and the junk on the floor, you climbed a number of stairs to get to the top where we would live, and the whole wall was a window that opened up into the fields.
I'm going to be freaked if that's what it actually ends up being. And also
I know. Very
questioning
specific.
why they're all the kids' toys.
Especially if the kids live in the house downtown. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
As we drove to the house for the first time, we asked our host about his family. And this is when we found out that he did, in fact, have a baby.
Okay.
We drove through the fields in the southern France region, admiring the surroundings, which we would call home for the next month. And we came up to the farmhouse. The farmhouse had no window panes, and ivy grew all over the exterior. The brick looked old, and it was absolutely stunning.
Oh.
It was the storage place for the honey shop and the bee production, so there was a lot of stuff in the main part of the house. However, after climbing a number of stairs, you reached our studio apartment where almost the entire wall was a window that opened up into the fields. We glanced at each other as we set our bags down in our new home, her thoughts landing on her dream that was so accurate, and mine landing on the fact that this place was definitely haunted. My friend and I share our psychic experiences with each other all the time, and we have a very comfortable and open relationship. I immediately told her that there was this middle-aged woman in the house. I'm not sure if I just said it to scare her or if I actually felt that, but over time, I truly believed it. We would walk upstairs after dinner together. As soon as the lights were off, we only traveled together through this house. And I would jokingly say, "Good night, woman," down the dark hallways full of storage. My friend hated that I did this, but I told her that we have to be respectful of this woman's house. Was I kidding? I don't even know. I love how much Mickey just has to trust her intuition. It's like whatever she feels, whatever she
Right.
senses, she just does. Like, don't question your thought, just do it.
It's like intrusive thoughts, but that are real. Like about
Yes.
paranormal. It's paranormal intrusive thoughts where the
Right.
paranormal is like planting its existence and what's to happen in Mickey's brain. And it just, you go with it.
Yeah, you got to trust what the wind whispers to you, Mickey.
Yeah.
Sounds like you do. We even slept with the light on in the bathroom, despite neither of us actually being afraid of the dark. One night, I'd fallen asleep before her. We shared a bed on the top floor of the studio, and she had gotten up to go use the bathroom. As she stood up at the end of the mattress that was on the floor, I said, "Why have you been hovering over me?" And she replied that she hadn't, and I told her that there was a woman hovering over me. I was
What?
asleep before this, and I think maybe I was still asleep during this. However, I vaguely remember the experience, and obviously terrified, she gave me shit the next morning that she had to be awake in the studio alone after I told her that there was a freaking woman hovering over me in my sleep. Sorry, friend.
Yeah, how was she able to fall asleep? She would not be able to fall asleep
Oh my
after that.
God, no. Fast forward about a week, and we're going about our French farm girl summer, and I'm traveling alone with our host to visit some beehives. On the property of the farmhouse, at the beginning of the driveway, there is a house, and then there's a fence, and then the farmhouse. Our host family owned the farmhouse, and someone else owned and lived in the home. And this is common on farm properties in this area. Despite living there for a month, we never saw the man who lived on the property a single time. This is a trigger warning for death and for suicide. Our host was telling me a story about when he first bought the farmhouse, and the man was putting up a fence to separate the land. And he mentioned that the man used to have a girlfriend. I guess he was not the nicest to her, and one day, while our host was working on the property, he heard some screaming coming from the house. So he ran over and he met the homeowner in the driveway, where he said that his girlfriend had died by suicide and the man had just found her. The story hit me in the gut, and I asked him, how old was the woman? He told me she was around 50, middle-aged woman. It happened on the property. And as soon as I got home, I told my friend, and she stared back at me in horror. I told her, remember that woman that was hovering over me? And at that moment, I cut off speaking about this, and we tried to pretend that I didn't somehow know about this middle-aged woman ghost on the property, but we do think it might have been her. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Mickey.
Mickey, you are a powerful being. I mean, that last story
know.
is really, really sad. And it is sad that like you are experiencing these things without understanding them until much later. And then it is something dark.
Yeah.
But now that you're slowly tapping into these gifts and abilities that you have, maybe they can be less scary, because I don't think that woman's ghost was negative. I think she was excited and happy that someone could see her. And she was just like trying to engage with you.
Yeah.
Sadly, during your sleep.
Sadly, during your sleep, and maybe also trying to just have some sort of acknowledgement too, right? Because I can't even imagine what she was going through to make that decision. But I'm sure seeing the joy and seeing the, like little French girl farm bee summer between these two friends, like it was such a girl power, like love and friendship and fun. And that energy, I'm sure, was so attractive to her. And she just wanted to like pick up on some of it and be a part of some of it. Such good vibes, and she got to absorb some of that from you.
And Mickey kept acknowledging her too, like saying, good night, woman.
Yeah, so she's like, all right, I'll hang out at night.
Yeah. Wow. Now I want to know Mickey's other experiences that are not like the three most what the fuck ones, because clearly you got some powers.
Right. Well, and I think too, if I'm going to make an assumption about some of the other ones, I bet that they're just experiences with the paranormal without actually knowing who the spirit is, because all three of these involved actually knowing, or at least having backstory of the person that you're seeing before they pass, which is really tragic to like get to experience the person in life and then in death too. Like that's a tough thing to have so much death happen around you.
It is.
But it does kind of, it's additional proof in the paranormal, in the spirit world.
I do love how many cool jobs Mickey has had.
I know. Very cool. I want to go to France and beekeep.
Okay. I have a story from our listener, Jamie, she, her, and it's called, I think I got my period in a portal that I accidentally opened.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Hi, besties. My name is Jamie, she, her. I've been contemplating writing my story for about 2 years now and finally gathered up the courage to mail it into y'all. So fingers crossed that the story itself exceeds the title, because I actually terrified myself even writing it out. Here it goes. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that my tears will fill Lake Tahoe's drought line if I hear it on the pod.
Well, I saw that Death Valley is filling for the first time in a long time. There's actual water there. Yeah. Wow. It's like a real lake, it's looking like.
My parents divorced when I was 10 years old, and my mom's sister and I moved from Nahant, Massachusetts, to Plymouth, New Hampshire. When I tell you that this was a big culture shock, I mean it. I went from Starbucks on every corner and endless beaches to play on to creepy old cottage homes on vast grassy lots and no Starbucks in sight for like 100 miles.
Yeah, and Plymouth, New Hampshire is also, like, it's very much a state college town. And Nahant is, I mean, you've seen it because Sabrina, I've pointed it out to you. It's like a very small peninsula. Everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
Fun fact about Nahant, they filmed part of Shutter Island there.
Oh, I rewatched that movie recently and I had a moment of what does happen in this movie?
It's one of those things, it's like Inception, where you have to watch it multiple times to pick up on the clues. And even so, even though I've seen it 4 times probably, there's
It's
still
kind
some
of
things
left
where I'm
uncertain.
yeah, I'm missing some pieces still.
Okay, overall, I acclimated pretty quickly, which I attribute to my age at the time. I sort of felt like the shiny new toy at school for the first few months, the new 6th grade girl with multiple pairs of Etnies shoes, because, divorce bribery, of course. But whatever. It made my transition easier as kids were relatively interested in me and accepting because of my undeniable early 2000s swag.
So cool. And Etnies were expensive. When you got
They were.
You wore them every day because
I don't think I ever owned a pair.
Oh, I did, and I had to live in them every day because my mom was like, if I'm buying these for you, you better freaking wear them. So I glued them to my feet.
My family was an off-brand mainstream family to save money. When all the people were getting Abercrombie, I was getting Aeropostale, which my first item of Abercrombie clothing I got for a birthday present, and I was so fucking stoked.
Well, I was getting bullied a lot at that time, so I think my mom was trying to do whatever she could to help me not bullied.
Middle schoolers are mean. Okay, I really just got lost in the mean chants that girls would chant at me.
Look at us now. Let's not look back. Let's look forward. Life was hard. We were
And it
once
still is
bullied.
hard.
I'm sure we were mean to others at certain periods of time when we were unhappy with ourselves. And now we're just trying to look at the bees and the birds, live happy lives.
And talk about ghosts. Jamie says, we moved into a small white farmhouse on Main Street, and it had a longer driveway that fit my basketball hoop and a stream in the backyard where I played often with my dog. The backyard also featured a large red barn that I often explored and daydreamed of filling with horses when, in reality, it was creepy as shit, and on more than one occasion, I found mummified kittens. I am so sorry, Sabrina, but may they rest in peace.
Yikes.
But hey, I was currently the cool new girl in school, and also as a born and bred horse girl, I was completely occupied with how this new home could potentially make all those previous birthday wishes for a pony come true. One Friday, I had 3 of my friends over for a slumber party. We decided to make a Ouija board out of leftover cardboard that was splayed all around the house from the move. My mom was in a meeting at the time, and I didn't think she would come home in time to catch our witchcraft. But I was wrong. 20 minutes into our little demon summoning session, my mother walked in the front door, and I whipped around in horror. To my utter shock, instead of getting angry, she smiled and pulled out a chair next to me and added her hands to the cardboard planchette.
No way. This is you as a mom, Sabrina. This is you.
As she did this, I took my own hands off in order to provide room for her, so there was 3 of my middle school friends chanting about keeping a bubble of light and positive energy around the perimeter of our house in order to keep us safe from evil. Uh-oh, should we have done this before we started? We played for what felt like an hour, and I noticed that she kept taking her hands off the planchette and putting them close to her chest. Looking at her with a questionable eye, she mentioned that her hands kept cramping. Funny enough, moments before I noticed this, I started to think about my paternal grandmother, who hated my mom. So with my 3 new friends managing the board, I asked a question following my suspicions. I asked, Nanny, if this is you, then can you tell me what we used to make after kindergarten when you would pick me up? The planchette sat for a moment before slowly spelling out FRENCHTOAST, French toast.
Yum.
I gasped.
What a good snack.
And I announced abruptly that we should stop. I'm not kidding you. The pit in my stomach that happened when that thing spoke the truth, it still sticks to me with this day. There was absolutely no way these girls knew what little known fact about me and my grandmother. And my mom didn't even have her hands on the planchette at that point in time. My mom looked at me and asked if I was okay, and I lied. But I did explain the next morning why my behavior had shifted. She believed me and was evidently weirded out. One thing I wish we had considered at the time was closing out that freaking board.
Rookie mistake. We've all been there.
So it's I love that Jamie's mom is playing with her, but she clearly has never really done it before either.
Right. Well, I also don't think maybe this is made up or just a rumor about the boards, but I didn't think you were supposed to take your hands off.
Yeah, I don't know. I have heard that too, but I guess I don't really know.
It's also complicated to have your grandmother come through and be like, I'm giving you some of these warm memories that we had. Remember when we used to make French toast together, but also I hate your mom and I'm going to make her hands cramp.
Right. I think it's funny. Okay, fast forward a few months, we were finally unpacked and making the farm our own. I began to feel really comfortable in that house until I didn't. Things would go missing often. I would put something down in the kitchen, turn around, and it simply wouldn't be there anymore. You'd walk into a room and whammo, goosebumps, and a deep chill down your spine would arise. I refrained from saying anything. We were raised Catholic, and until the divorce sent my mom into spirituality more, but ghosts weren't really a thing that you discussed or acknowledged. These sensations and thoughts became louder for me over the span of a year, and one day I was outside playing basketball with my dog Lucy when it began to rain. I remember walking up 3 stairs, placing my hand on the door handle to the screened-in porch, and as I turned the handle, I looked in the window directly to my left, which was the only window in our living room, and there, in the center of the middle window pane, was a woman, dressed in a black bonnet, looking past me towards the main room with this sort of despair look on her face. I let go of that door handle, spun on my heels, ran back out into the rain with my dog. Was it real? Am I hungry? I'm wet. Maybe I'm imagining things? I gave it another hour outside and talked myself into the mindset that I had imagined it. And sure enough, we entered the house.
An hour in the rain to avoid the ghost.
To avoid a ghost. We entered the house seamlessly this time, no ghost. The next few months went by and everything sort of simmered down until one night. So my sister and I shared a room. She was in junior high and slept on the bottom bunk of our extra large twin bunk bed. I awoke in the middle of the night, no idea what time it was, but I think I have a good guess and I bet you do too.
Witching hour.
I noticed lights from a passing car on the far wall pass just by my feet, which was a common occurrence. And suddenly I became more awake as I came to realize the car was not passing. This light remained in a place on my wall. As my gaze lingered, the light began to transform shape. I have no idea what the motive with this was, but I swear to you, it looked like a shitty version of a Halloween ghost costume. 2 holes and a mouth appeared on what looked to be a floating sheet. Sleep paralysis, you say? Nope. I sat straight up when this began to happen, and in seconds, the shitty ghost costume transformed into the shape of an old woman with long white hair. She looked just as stunned as I did. Like she didn't think I could see her. And as this is happening...
That's so interesting. To me, I'm almost thinking like she intentionally made herself look like a stereotypical ghost before transforming into her full-bodied apparition. But is that how she was presenting herself? Or was that just like this listener's mind trying to make sense of what they were seeing?
It sounds like neither of them had any control of what's happening. They both are very shocked by this situation. As this is happening, we're both looking at each other, me in terror, her in amazement, and she starts the swooping motion to come closer to me. And in this moment, I lay straight back down, snapped my sheet over my face as I chanted, "It's not real. This is not happening. It's not real. It's not happening." I squeezed my eyes as hard as I could, not wanting to see her again. And this was the single longest night of my life. I stayed awake until morning. I actually remember my rapid breathing. I remember thinking that frozen with fear is an actual thing that can happen. I remember the sweat running down my back as I begged myself to rationalize this experience. Weeks went by, my visits continued, and every other night I'd pop up, acknowledge this terrifying witch woman summoning me to my demise, and then I would begin my mantra of terror until dawn. I got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, and I finally asked my sister if she had been noticing anything peculiar about the house, and she responded so quickly with the blank yes. I had to pry a little further, as I stated before. This is not something our religion or upbringing allowed us to comprehend, and we didn't really know how to voice it. So I explained what I had been seeing at night, and once again, very plainly, very straightforward, she said, yes.
Oh my God.
It took a moment, but she eventually elaborated. When you and Mom were out of town last night, I woke up to that same thing, and I yelled, "Oh, fuck no," and went back to sleep. I was stunned. This was confirmation. It was real. What I was seeing was real. It gave me the courage I needed, and I called my mom while she was at work. I explained the conversation I had had with my sister and begged her to move us out of this hellhole. My mother had the audacity to respond with, "Oh, honey, I was really hoping you girls weren't noticing anything. I'm so sorry."
Oh, man.
My mother had been waking up in the middle of the night, not sure when, but I think we all have a pretty good idea, to someone creeping up the staircase. A couple times she had gotten up thinking that she would catch my sister in the act of sneaking back into the house, except when she would open the door at just the right moment, the creak of the top of the stairs, there would be no one there. After we were all on board with the fact that we were 100% living in a haunted house, that is when shit got real. It was almost like they knew, now that we were all acknowledging it and not hiding it anymore, they were going to ramp it up. Jeez. One night, during one of my lovely visits, I began to have an intense abdominal pain. And I was laying there frozen with fear, but the pain became too much, and I began to try and wake my sister up. First, in a hushed voice, I would say, "Julie, Julie." Then finally, "Julie." And she practically leapt out of her bed to save me from whatever shit ghost lady was trying to pull. My big sister, my hero. Ghosty was gone when the lights flicked on, and my sister ripped my sheets back to check my stomach, and there it was. Aunt Flo had paid her very first visit. Really great timing on her behalf. It felt like 2 hauntings in one, for goodness sake. Maybe that ghost was my Aunt Flo. Maybe she snapped her ghosty fingers and found a way to really mess with me this time by triggering my uterine lining. Whatever it was, it really happened, and it kind of grosses me out. To make matters worse, my mom consulted our landlady, who had grown to be a good friend of hers, about the hauntings. And the woman laughed abruptly about the physical description of our nightly visitor because she knew who exactly it was. The previous owners of the house, Doris and Ed, they lived in our house back in the 70s. And our landlady was friends with Doris back in the day and was able to peg it as her because of her long white hair. She exclaimed that they were very nice people and apparently loved children. Needless to say, we really only lasted 2 more months in this home before completely jumping ship and finding a new build with no prior residents. My mom even had her hippie friends come over to bless the house, clap in corners, spread lavender like glitter all over the place, and explain to the ghosts that they were scaring us. After they had completely finished cleansing this house, it felt significantly lighter and all the visits stopped. Still, we got out of the house, and I feel for whoever wound up living there after we did, because I really hope they didn't get so scared that their uterus literally erupted in the middle of the night. Well, that's my story. Hope you got a kick out of it. Please know that your podcast also haunts me sometimes, but I seriously cherish the few hours a week I get to spend with my spooky gal pals. So be it. Happy spooky season, Jamie.
Jamie, oh my gosh. I feel like I would be like Jamie's mom because I know I'm already exhibiting some of those behaviors where sometimes things fall or things occur in my house that I know is a ghost, but I'm like, I'm just going to ignore it because I don't want Brian to be scared. So I won't say anything. So I understand her mom being like, damn, I was really hoping you guys were not experiencing this. It's spooky even after finding out that the ghost is a fan of just like families and kids and has good
Corinne?
energy.
We're not just going to roll past that. Are there more hauntings that you've not told us about?
I mean, yes. But like, there's nothing really significant. It's just there'll be like a really loud noise or like something will fall or it sounds like something has fallen. And Brian and I will look at each other and then we'll walk into the other room and there'll be nothing has changed.
Girl,
it's a haunted house. I live in an old ass area.
It begins.
The houses around me are like built in the 1600s and 1700s. So
this was inevitable. You knew that this was your destiny because it was your past.
I've been training for this since I was a baby. So.
Literally. It's been passed on to you through family, through generations.
Yeah.
And it will continue.
Okay. This old woman who would appear to her, I do have a pitch for ghosts.
Okay.
I know that spirits, when they appear, oftentimes there are temperature fluctuations, and we almost always attribute a really cold bubble and sensation and pocket of a room as a spirit being present. If ghosts have the ability to alter their temperature, wouldn't it be so lovely if they could be really, really warm and when you have pregnancy cramps, be your heating pad?
That would be very cool. That. I also, as far as experiences and stories of getting your period for the first time, Jamie, this one maybe is the best.
Not many people can say that there was a ghost watching them and involved basically in them getting their period. She was there with you. She was supporting you through it, whether you wanted her there or not.
Right. I mean, it's definitely creepy to continuously wake up to this woman staring at you while you sleep. But I do like this idea that, because at first it seemed like they were both surprised that it was happening. But now with the context of like Jamie's sister and Jamie's mom, like everyone was experiencing this ghost. I like this idea that this ghost was like, okay, this is my new reality. I live here now. Yeah. I really like these kids, but how can I make my life interesting? How do I find new ways to appear? Like she like found a way to appear as the typical stereotypical sheet ghost and then transform into herself. And she seemed pleased with herself. Like she was almost more amazed because she actually made it happen.
That's a great perspective. And that does make me think back to when I was living in Littleton, New Hampshire, and I saw a ghost that literally looked like a cutout, like a paper cutout of a ghost, like stereotypical, going across the wall. And I was like 4 or 5 at the time. And I always thought that was such a strange thing to happen because I was like, well, what kind of ghost just looks like a kid's construction paper cutout? Right. But maybe it was a way for a spirit to present itself in the way that it thought it was going to be least scary to me.
Right. I'm on board with this ghost, only in the sense that, like, after doing this podcast for how many years, like, in comparison to the horrors we've heard, this is a low-level, enjoyable, spooky ghost.
I agree with you. Hello, lovely ghostesses. I hope this email finds you well. I'm a new listener, but I've fallen in love with your podcast, and I've been religiously trying to catch up. So much to get through, though, and I love it.
Yay.
I finally decided to write in a portion of my story after listening to some of Corinne's story. Congratulations on your pregnancy. Thank you, thank you. As a child, I could hear people's thoughts. What? They would think it, I would say it, and they would alarmingly ask why I had said that thing. And I remember this happening frequently as a child, but the poor reactions scared me. So after a while, I shut out this ability and it's never happened to me again. I could also read people's auras. They weren't always your typical aura, though. I could not see colors then, only black and white. And I used this ability to decide who was good and who was bad. I thought the white light was a sign of purity and that the blackness was evil. But as an adult, I've come to realize that this aura field wasn't good or evil. It was pain. People with black auras were sad. They had depression.
Aww.
They had something broken in them in some way. The white light people had these higher vibrations. They had experienced love and stability. Oh, this makes me so sad for everyone.
This bitch is black aura then.
I think I'm milky gray. I think you're gray too.
Depends on the day.
I also could see spirits. As a 3-year-old, my mom and I lived in Everett. We lived with several other people as roommates, and I was the only kid in the mix, but there was Rebecca, my ghost friend, that I frequently played with. And I don't actually remember her much, but I do remember that she would hide things and then tell me where they were. And I know the adults would experience hauntings frequently. I even got mad at Rebecca once and yelled at her that she needed to remember that the tables had been turned and I was her mother in our last life. Oh, this is interesting. Needless to say, I was a very intuitive child, and somewhere along the way, traumas happened and I shut down, boxing all of these things in until many years later. At the age of 20, I began to realize that I am a witch. I was born a witch, and my early childhood made my witchcraft my lifestyle. I was new to this realization, but it was my world. It was the main focus, and I became very open to experiences and hauntings, so I began to work in a notoriously haunted hotel in my small Montana town.
This is so cool.
This hotel is hundreds of years old, and it retains so much energy. It's almost like a portal to the spirit realm. But overall, the whole town is considered to be haunted. I started to notice shadow people, particularly one very tall, very evil shadow entity, which began to follow me everywhere. And that year, I adopted a very tiny kitten named Taboo, who's now 12 and very content with life.
Taboo.
Taboo was a very random addition to my life, but she, myself, and my dog at the time were a close-knit little family, and it was us against the world and my unstoppable 20-year-old mentality. This is when the haunting started. I would go to sleep, and then I would wake up to things smacking my head or voices telling me to look quick, and the shadow man would be peering at me through the closet doors. I would hear people calling my name as clear as day when no one else was around. Until one day, I noticed my kitten hissing in the mirror at something behind me. I could see my bathroom mirror from my living room, and I could see Taboo desperately trying to see behind me. I went to her quickly, and she started growling and freaking out until I picked her up. And then I turned around to yell, "You cannot be here in my room if you intend to harm us. You can only stay if you have good intentions. Otherwise, leave now."
Smart.
As quick as it started, it stopped. No more shadow people. Then I met a man, and he was a total jerk. And I will admit, this was a horrible person to have in my life. But during the third day that we hung out, a huge bluish orb shot out of him, swirled around him 3 separate times, and I told him about this orb, and he literally got up and left. That night, I dreamt that an angel came down and told me that I had met my child, and that this would be his father, and that this was all a part of the plan.
What?
There were two people silhouetted behind the angel that was holding a baby, and I knew that this was my truth, but I hated this man. 6 months later, I was pregnant. I knew in my heart of hearts that this child was my son, and he was supposed to be a part of my world. We never checked his gender, but I did not need to know. I knew he was a boy, and I could only settle on a boy name. Fast forward to now, my baby will be turning 10 this year, and his dad is sometimes involved when he can be. Otherwise, we live with my partner of 6 years, who's an amazing parent to my beautiful sunshine.
Mm.
And they wrote sunshine as S-O-N, like sun.
Oh,
My
that's
son
so cute.
shined.
Oh.
Thank God my son has a healthy father figure in his life. Since then, so much has happened, and I can sometimes predict death. I have multiple stories that I would love to someday share with you.
Yeah.
And I also dream of spirits that have passed regularly. Sometimes it feels like a dream, but most of the time, it's a connection and a conversation with the deceased. I no longer fear life after death. It'll come before we know it, and I'm content here for now.
Mm.
I remember my soul's life before picking this world. I remember planning this life out with my soul group. As an infant, I remember picking this body. My mom was told by a psychic that I am a, quote, walk-in soul. She always tries to tell me that it's not true, but it is. I don't know who I stole this body from, but I remember the first time seeing through these eyes and realizing the big blue sky was so beautiful. Babies supposedly cannot see colors right away, so obviously I wasn't a newborn anymore by the time I was absorbed into this body. Oh my gosh, someone else got kicked out of this. There's some other soul that was like, what happened? Why am I back here? But I remember following this body around and watching from above for a while before being in it. She knows whatever way it happened that this soul was meant to be her child, and she's happy to have me. I wish I knew more about walk-ins. Maybe you guys could have an episode on it. Yeah, because I've never heard of that before, but that is really interesting.
That is super interesting.
I feel like I could go on forever. I know I have intuitive abilities buried deep in my soul, and I would love to tap into them again and have control over them again. I am thoroughly enjoying the podcast and cannot wait to get through all of it. Sending you both all the love and light, Kirsten.
It's interesting because there are like times where I think back to my life and I feel like consciously didn't exist. And I know like as you grow, you evolve and like you become more conscious of your reality. But like there are times where I'm like, did I exist in my body until a certain point? Because I don't know. And so I'm curious if that happens more often than not.
Yeah.
And then I have a strange theory. What if Kirsten's imaginary friend, Rebecca, is that her name?
Yes,
was
Rebecca.
the soul that she kicked out.
Oh, it almost makes me think that because she was like, I was your mom in a past life.
Yeah.
It almost makes me think that they're competing and they're like trying to always be the mom or always be the one in control. And then Kirsten realized I can just freaking chuck Rebecca on the side.
I definitely want to read more about walk-in souls. That's so fascinating.
I also need to know more. I mean, it doesn't sound like Kirsten is able to say more because the ability has left, but it's like being able to read people's minds and saying what they were thinking and freaking a lot of people out.
I've had that happen to me a lot. That happened to me like a lot.
Really? You should, I don't know, figure out some way to tap into that more.
It happens mostly when I'm spending like a lot of time with someone or I mean, this happened once when this was like early days of the podcast. I remember I was like crossing the street and there was a man on the other side of the street and I knew he was going to say something about the sweatshirt I was wearing. Like that he was going to, like as he passed me, he was going to say a specific sentence about my sweatshirt. And he did. He said it. And I have a lot of like moments where if I'm around someone, this also might be a trauma response where like I'm so good at picking up on people's like body, emotion, and physical cues that I'm able to like comprehend or put together the thought that they're thinking. But there are a lot of times where I'm like, I know you're thinking about X, Y, and Z. Or they have the thought and they haven't said it out loud yet, but I can say it to them.
That is really interesting. Because it also makes me wonder, it's like, is it thought reading or is it something where it's like you're reading time? Like, does time come to you quicker than it sometimes comes to other people?
I don't know. But how do I control it if that's the case?
I don't know. Dr. Strange, you tell us.
Someone help us.
Help!
I liked this one. These ones are all like good, longer stories that leave us pondering again about the paranormal because the answer is that we know nothing.
Right. They all have a little something in them that's different than the rest.
Yeah. I feel like that was like a very like a lot said in a sentence with nothing being said.
Well, because they all have there's different examples.
Each story we read from all of you listeners was different.
But it's like the walk-in souls, you know, the mind reading, like different things.
We have little nuggets now that we're going to want to read more about after this.
Yeah. You've introduced some new sides of the paranormal to us in this episode.
So if you would like to share your email, your encounters, your paranormal experiences and beliefs with us, please email them to us at twogirlsoneghost@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes and join the pyramid scheme, which is so easy. It takes minimal effort. You can do it via the form of like a text on like a Facebook post. If you still have MySpace, do it on there. Reddit, I don't know. Do your thing. Basically just tell 2 people at least about our podcast and then have them tell 2 people. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're in an MLM marketing scheme and got lost in the 2 girls, 1 ghost triangle.
It's maybe the healthiest MLM that will be out there.
It is.
I think.
You get nothing except for ghost stories from it.
You get nothing out of this and you can leave whenever you want.
Unless our ghost has anything to say about it.
Head over to Patreon if you want additional episodes and all of our episodes ad-free and 1 week early. We also go live Tuesday nights to bring people on stage with us to tell ghost stories live in a group setting. And we have book clubs and other various things on Patreon that's very fun. And when things come up in the paranormal news, we certainly discuss it there. And shout out to Jamie Ryan. She's an incredible editor who edits both our audio and our video and all of the stuff that we put on Patreon as well. So thank you to Jamie.
Thank you. We love you all.
And we will see you on the other side.
Very spooky.